At any moment now, we will see the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, arrive on Capitol Hill. That was him leaving his home moments ago. Once inside, he will answer questions from Senate Intelligence Committee staff. This is all behind closed doors, and this is all about his contacts, 4 separate ones, with Russians or Russian government representatives.
So while this senior advisor and son-in-law to the president is on his way to Capitol Hill, the president of the United States made a new statement this morning in just the last few minutes where he takes aim again at his own administration and his own attorney general. I will read it to you out loud. So why aren't the committees and investigators and, of course, our beleaguered AG looking into crooked Hillary's crimes and Russia relations? Back with us now, our panel, Gloria Borgia. I'm going to put this question first to you. Our beleaguered AG, spoken by the man who's doing the beleaguering.
Right. I mean, he basically says, you know, our AG under attack.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm the one doing the attacking. If I were Jeff Sessions and I saw that, I would not take that as a huge vote of confidence from the President of the United States. He's calling his own Attorney General beleaguered and then saying, why aren't you doing your job? And your job would be to look into Hillary Clinton, et cetera, not to be recusing yourself from Russia. And if you've recused yourself from Russia, well, then you have time to be doing the more important work. So not exactly a vote of confidence, again, to Jeff Sessions. And we've known for quite some time that he's not pleased with him.
But then, Senator Santorum, this isn't that surprising, given the interview that the president gave the New York Times at the end of last week, saying even Jeff Sessions' testimony for confirmation was bad, that he would never have hired him had he known he would recuse himself. It's not surprising. I guess the question I continue to have is, what is the playbook here? What is the tactic? Is this an effort to get eventually Sessions, who seems like Teflon right now, he's not quitting, to get him to quit so that he can get an AG in there who would fire Special Prosecutor Mueller? What is the goal here for the president?
I'm not sure there is a goal. I think you have to just understand the president. The president saw Jeff Sessions.
Help me understand.
Yeah, well, let me give it a shot. The president saw Jeff Sessions as a friend, a close confidant. They developed a very close relationship over the course of the campaign. Jeff Sessions was someone who was as close to the president as anybody that had come on the campaign trail. And I think he feels betrayed. I think he felt like Jeff Sessions didn't do what a friend would do, which is step in there and step on the landmine, take the hits, and do what was necessary. And I think that really, if there's one thing that I've seen about Donald Trump, is that when he does build that bond and he feels like someone hasn't been completely loyal to him, when he has been loyal to them, that causes some real problems in the relationship.
Would he at all see that as a choice between being loyal to the president and being loyal to the Constitution?
Well,
I mean, look,
I would make.
Go ahead.
I would make the argument that that Jeff Sessions could have been loyal to the Constitution had he not recused himself. So I think the element of recusal is at the core of everything at this, because I think the president sees that as the root of all the problems that have come from that. And so it's not I don't think there was a constitutional requirement that Jeff Sessions recuse himself. And I think the president looks at that and sees it as, something that wasn't loyal.
Well, there was certainly a requirement by DOJ regulations that Attorney General Sessions recuse himself under this circumstance. Really, what President Trump appears to be chafing against here is an independent Department of Justice, an Attorney General who's acting on behalf of the best interests of the American people and not the best interests of his buddy, the president. That actually raises much bigger questions about how the president himself views the role of an independent law enforcement wing.
And I would only add, at the risk of disagreeing with you, which I would never do publicly or privately, I will never not be surprised by a president of the United States seeming to publicly ridicule, his attorney general, his first
over and
supporter
over
from the Senate.
again.
It's shocking to me that we see it, continue to see it each and every morning. But perhaps in the context, of what he's been saying, in the last 24 hours, he was talking about Republicans in general, and he sees it as the job of sort of every Republican, in his administration is out to defend him exclusively. Let me just read you what he said. It's very sad that Republicans, even some that were carried over the line on my back, do very little to protect their president. Dana.
Look, I think if anything has changed since he got a new communications director in place, someone who is kind of simpatico seems to be simpatico with the way that Donald Trump conducts himself, and more importantly, Anthony Scaramucci said himself, sort of let Donald be Donald. That President Trump has, it's hard to imagine him being even more eager to share his feelings than he has been over the past 6 months. But it does seem that he is, and even more so, eager to do it in the way that he did it during the campaign, to take a shot at the establishment, to take a shot at Republicans, to take a shot at his own attorney general, and to use his platforms to kind of chide these people who he said he was going to come in and shake up. Who knows if this is going to have any kind of good end to the story, whether or not it's going to have any success. But it does feel that the president feels that he has a more license to even put more out on Twitter about what's going through his head than he did before, which is hard to imagine.
Gloria, let me get your take. Hold on, just add to what you were going to say. Add this, your take on that, because Dana brings up Anthony Scaramucci today. Is officially his first day on the job, although he was on the job all weekend doing the Sunday shows, including that fascinating half-an-hour interview with Jake Tapper right here. I just wonder if you think he's going to be an asset to this White House or potentially a liability, because he put a lot out there. He's the one who said, yeah, we did talk about pardons in the Oval Office, after Jay Sekulow, the attorney for the president, said, no way, no one talked about that. And he's the one who offered up to Jake, just offered up that, by the way, the president called me from Air Force One and basically said, Russia's so good at this stuff that if they had hacked our election, our U.S. intelligence agencies wouldn't even know about it. Two big things.
I think Scaramucci may talk too much. I think that may turn into a problem for him. He's kind of new at this, and he's offering information that perhaps he shouldn't be offering. I mean, it's great for us to know it, that he's having these conversations with the president, and he's kind of lifting the veil a little bit. But he also let us know that the president still doesn't believe, despite the unanimity among the intelligence agencies, that the Russians, that the Russians hacked the election. So, I think it's going to be a brave new world here with Scaramucci, who is really, kind of another version of Donald Trump, if you will. I think they see eye to eye on a lot of things, and I think they come at things the same way. And what we see from Donald Trump and from Scaramucci is the demand for ultimate loyalty. So Scaramucci is going to tell people who work for him today, you're going to be fired if you leak to journalists. And Donald Trump is saying to the Attorney General, whom he seems to be trying to getting him to quit with this tweet today, you weren't ultimately loyal to me because you recused yourself, so you ought to be gone.
They're, Gloria, on the same page now, but backtrack about 6 months, 12 months, and they're totally different pages on gun control, climate change, hedge fund taxing.
Never mind.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about Donald Trump himself.
There you go, Dana Bash. So smartly put, and that is why you two ladies are the chiefs of everything politics here. Thank you very, very much, all of you. So the president keeps saying, look at how much we've done, look at the stock market, and the stock market is soaring. Doesn't matter for half of Americans, though. CNN chief business correspondent Christine Romans is here.
Hi, guys. That's right. The investor class, and then there's the working class. We do know the investor class has been enriched, and I wanted to show you what is driving the markets here. We have futures flat pretty much right now, but it was record highs for all the major averages last week. A very good week. And the S&P 500, that's the gauge that your 401k is most likely closely tied to. The S&P 500 is up more than 10% for the year. So what are these Goldilocks fundamentals that we're talking about here in the economy driving things? Moderate economic growth, an improving labor market, low inflation, and very good corporate earnings. Companies are making a lot of money. And as you know, Poppy, stock prices reflect how much money companies are making, not necessarily how Main Street feels. We're going to get a whole bunch more corporate earnings today. Alphabet, that's the Google parent, that's today. You can see all the other ones later this week. It's interesting, Alphabet just revealed as well that it spent a record amount of money lobbying the White House, lobbying. Tech companies have never spent more money lobbying Washington because they're on the opposite side of a lot of issues, including high-tech visas and the like. So there you go. There's the opening bell. Looking for things kind of flat right now, but last week was a great week.
They're
guys.
cheering about something.
Yep, I guess they are. They're cheering because it's Monday.
They always clap at that bell.
I applaud their optimism. Christine Roman, it's great to have you here with us this morning. All right, we have an eye on Capitol Hill. Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, senior advisor. He will show up and walk past this spot really any moment from now. He's driving to the Hill any moment to speak to Senate investigators. We'll bring you that moment live when it happens.
All right, in just moments, the president's son-in-law and one of his top White House aides, Jared Kushner, will face Senate investigators. We've got some color on what is happening, who's going with him. This is a small group inside the room today, about 4 to 6 Senate staff. He's going to be with his lawyer, his attorney, Abbe Lowell, and a staffer. They're going to take notes of the meeting. He has provided documents as well as his formal statement that he finalized, we've learned, over the weekend.
Yeah, now one of the more interesting things here that we're getting word from Suzanne Melvo on Capitol Hill, the interview will be transcribed, and Kushner's legal team has told the Senate Intelligence Committee he has no problem with the transcript being made public. It is up to Senate protocol, says Kushner's legal team in that case. And also, Kushner has no preference as to whether he goes under oath for the interview. He is willing to do sworn testimony if asked. Now, even if he's not sworn in, he can't lie to Senate investigators. That is something that has come up in the past with Miguel Tejada, a baseball player. Totally separate tangent right there. And the legal team here says there's no question that Kushner will not answer, and that it will take 2 hours. And yeah,
this is, all of these things show a Jared Kushner seemingly wanting to be very transparent, saying you can release a transcript, I'll go under oath, and there's no question I won't answer. Let's see if we get that transcript.
As of now, after all these months. All right. While that is going on, the President of the United States, Jared Kushner's boss and father-in-law, is on the attack against Republicans, hitting them for not doing more to protect him. And he says there'll be repercussions if Republicans do not repeal and replace Obamacare. This is what he wrote in a statement just moments ago. He said Republicans have a last chance to do the right thing on repeal and replace after years of talking and campaigning on it. Now, joining us now to discuss this issue and all kinds of issues going on this morning, Congressman Ralph Abraham, Republican from Louisiana. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Let me ask you about some of the things the president has been writing about Republicans over the last few hours. He says it's sad that some Republicans, even some that were carried over the line on my back, do very little to protect their president. Do you see it as your job, Congressman, to protect the president?
I think it's our job to support the president if we're going to ride under the Republican brand. And with the repeal and replace, the Senate, I know, is working very hard this week, and they will get this thing done. To send just a repeal vote to the president, I think it sends a statement, but it doesn't send a solution. We need a repeal and replace so that I, as a country doctor, can write the prescriptions I want for my patients, get the specialists that I need for my patient, send them to the hospital that I need to send them to for my patient, and again, get them what they need. And I'm unable to do that right now with the current Obamacare system.
So, Congressman, just building off of the statement that John read from the president, we don't know what specifically he was talking about. He may have been talking, though, about sanctions and the bill in the House right now on sanctioning Russia, because just moments before that, he tweeted about Russia, calling it all a witch hunt. In this bill that sits in the House, as you know, it does not give the president the power to alleviate or loosen these sanctions on Russia. Why is it important to take this power away from the president? Are you supportive of the way the bill looks and stands right now?
Right now, I do have some questions with the bill. Again, we need to support the president. Look, Russia is no friend of the United States.
But does that mean giving him sort of unbridled power when it comes to these sanctions?
Not at all. We have to have constraints on Congress, on the president, on all aspects of society. But again, I'm a firm believer in keeping your friends close and your enemies closer. Russia is a country, a President Putin, that we have to be very cognizant of, be very suspicious of, and have to watch him very closely as to what his actions globally are and the way it affects America. So, certainly we want the president to be able to do what the president needs to do to make those things happen, to protect our national security. But at the same time, we certainly need oversight on all of us up here on the Hill.
Okay. Go ahead.
You know, on the idea of protecting, you called it loyalty to the president right there. Is your sworn oath to the president, or is it to the Constitution? And do you think it's the job of Republicans to protect the president on the Russia investigation?
It's not the job to protect the president on the Russian investigation. It's the president's job to be very transparent. And as your previous broadcast on the Kushner thing, he is being very transparent. And I think the president has been very transparent on this issue. Again, we did swear an oath to the Constitution, not to the president. And you don't go and all in for a particular person or particular party. You take a step back and you look at the objective data, and then you make a decision, and that's what we are doing up here in Congress. Again, we need to give the president some leeway. He, by the way, is the president of the United States, and we have elected him to that job. We in Congress do have oversight over ourselves, somewhat the president, and other branches of the government, and that needs to stay in place.
Why do you think the president has been, in your words, so transparent on all things Russia? Many would argue the opposite, even some of your fellow Republicans, when it comes to the refusal to release his tax returns, when it comes to his firing of the FBI director because of, by his own admission, the Russia investigation, and his slamming of his own attorney general for recusing himself in the Russia investigation. What about the president has been transparent on all things Russia?
He has been transparent on basically everything that we've asked him to be transparent. The tax returns has nothing to do with the Russian so-called collusion. And let's define collusion in the law structure as being an illegal conspiracy or a cooperation between two parties. We have had upwards of 6 and I think now 7 committees, both on the Senate and the House side, look into this Russian collusion. And I've used that in quotation marks. And guess what? None of those committees have come back with any findings of significance.
Congressman, they're not done.
Well, they are to a point that nothing has come out of these.
How do you know that? You don't sit on these committees.
Look, I sit on a lot of committees and I hear a lot of things that are being done, are being discussed, the same things that you guys hear in the news media. And again, nothing has come out that said this president or his son-in-law or any of his family has colluded with the Russian government.
Congressman, thank you for your time.
Right.
I think we'll have you back, to talk more about these investigations. Also, healthcare. We raised,
ready to go.
Covered a range of things today. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman. The live pictures you're looking at, we're waiting for Jared Kushner to walk up those steps. As much as we love looking at all the employees walking into the beautiful Capitol this morning, we're waiting for him.
You do see some of the fashions, of late July in Washington, D.C.
Like it's hot down there? Yeah.
I saw a lot of khakis. I think I saw some seersucker, and you're looking at short sleeves on some of the men and women protecting the Capitol right now. All right, we got a lot going on this morning. 9 people are dead. Many of the several dozen survivors could suffer permanent consequences, and the driver of the tractor trailer found crammed with more than 100 people. Hang on one second, guys. I think let's go back to Capitol Hill right now. This, I believe, is Jared Kushner, senior advisor to the president, arriving. Let's listen.
Jared, Mr. Kushner, was it appropriate for you to meet with the Russian officials?
Mr. Kushner,
did anybody in the campaign fully understand that?
All right, Jared Kushner, senior advisor to the president, son-in-law, as loquacious as ever upon his arrival.
That is a true fact, as loquacious as ever, because he doesn't usually say very much. You see another set of microphones that I believe he'll walk past in a moment, so we'll see if he addresses any questions. You saw him walk in with his attorney, Abby Lowell, there before he goes to this relatively small meeting with Senate staffers. About 4 to 6 of them will be present. He has said in what we've learned in the last few moments that he will be very transparent. Our Suzanne Malveaux reporting that there is no question he says he will not answer. He is open to the transcript of this meeting, interview being released. And go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, that is Jared Kushner right there. You can see him, Abby Lowell, the attorney there, obscured behind the man in the hat. There he is, Abby Lowell, his attorney in the blue tie, arriving for the discussion, a wave from Jared Kushner. The one thing Suzanne pointed out that I think we hadn't known before, which is fascinating, is that the Kushner legal team has no problem with the transcription being made of this entire process.
And they say it's up to the Senate committee's preferences as to whether or not he will go under oath for the interview, but that he is willing to go under oath and give sworn testimony.
Again, we wanted to see, just in case, in the rare instance that we would hear some of the first words ever from the senior advisor to the president, Jared Kushner, who almost never speaks in public or in a way that the press can hear him. Now he is going to speak behind closed doors to these Senate investigators, these staffers from the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Right. We should be learning more about that in a little while. We'll bring you that when it begins. We have much more ahead. Stay with us.
All right, moments ago, senior advisor to the president, Jared Kushner, arrived on Capitol Hill. He is behind closed doors right now, meeting with Senate investigators, staffers on the Senate Intelligence Committee. That wave was about as much as we got or heard from Jared Kushner right there.
So we'll learn more as he comes out of this meeting. We might even get a transcript, as we've learned, because his team said just this morning, according to our Suzanne Malveaux, that he's completely open to a full transcript of this interview being released, and he's totally open to going under oath if they choose to do so. So we'll follow that also for you. Also want to tell you about a very, very deadly...
Well, I think we have Manu Raju.
Do we have Manu?
Manu Raju,
Okay.
I think, is with us on Capitol Hill. Manu, are you there? So the meeting now underway.
Jared Kushner the meeting is now underway. Jared Kushner actually just walked by where I'm standing right now. Tried to ask him a question about that Trump Tower meeting, of course, that he acknowledged in this 11-page statement that he gave to the committee, saying that in that statement that he gave to the committee that there was really nothing to that meeting at all. He really didn't follow the email exchanges that were going back and forth. Tried to ask him if he regretted that in any way. Not surprisingly, he ignored the question, walked by, smiled, waved to the cameras as he walked into this meeting room. Now, we expect maybe 4 to 6 staffers to be in that meeting. No members who will be in there. He will not be under oath. It doesn't mean that he cannot tell the full truth. That, of course, misleading Congress in any way is something that could be prosecuted. So this is a very significant meeting, first of 2 this week on Capitol Hill. We'll see how long it goes. His team telling Suzanne Malveaux maybe not more than 2 hours, but it really depends on the number of questions that people have, especially in light of this disclosure of a number of meetings that he had in the transition and during the campaign. He, of course, says nothing to it. We'll see what members of Congress have to say, guys.
All right, Manu Raju for us on Capitol Hill, having just seen Jared Kushner walk by in the halls of the Hart Building right now. Jared Kushner behind closed doors with Senate investigators right now. In the meantime, tractor-trailer driver James Bradley will be in court today. He's accused of driving a truck with more than 100 people crammed inside. 9 of them have been confirmed dead this morning. Dozens more still recovering in the hospital. We've learned also that some of these people may suffer permanent brain damage as a result of the conditions that they were trafficked in. Our Ed Lavandera is in San Antonio with more. And Ed, what else have you learned?
Well, we are awaiting that court appearance here in downtown San Antonio. 60-year-old James Bradley of Clearwater, Florida, expected to face federal criminal charges here today in making that initial court appearance. But really all the eyes and investigators kind of focused on trying to piece together this human smuggling operation, just who else was involved, where these people were coming from. 9 people dead, as you mentioned, 30 others being treated for heat exhaustion and asphyxiation. Nearly 20 of those in critical condition, we're told. So we're still waiting on more updates on the conditions of those other people. 2 of the victims that are being treated in hospitals are 15-year-olds. So this story really highlighting the lengths that many people around the world will go to get to the United States. It's a horrifying story. The fire chief yesterday telling us, John and Poppy, that the temperatures inside that tractor trailer could have reached more than 150 degrees.
All right, Ed Lavandera for us right now in San Antonio. Again, that court appearance scheduled for later this morning. A simply horrible story there. Rising tensions in Jerusalem. Security cameras now in place outside one of the holiest sites in the city. The United Nations Security Council holding an emergency meeting very shortly. We'll bring you the latest.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm John Berman.
And I'm Poppy Harlow on the Hill, Capitol Hill, that is, and on the hot seat. Just moments ago, senior advisor to the president, Jared Kushner, arrived. He's now behind closed doors in a meeting with Senate investigators. They want to know more about these 4 meetings he had with Russians and Russian government officials as they continue to investigate Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. But before sitting down with investigators, Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, offered a lengthy defense, 11 pages to be exact, in this statement where he said he did not collude, he did nothing wrong, and he frankly blamed his naivete as a political newcomer.
Yeah, and Jared Kushner seems to downplay the meeting that was set up by Donald Trump Jr. speaking to a lawyer and a host of other characters with connections with Russia. That meeting, of course, set up to provide dirt from the Russian government, so said the email on Hillary Clinton. Jared Kushner said, though, from his perspective, it was so meaningless, quote, that I actually emailed an assistant from the meeting after I'd been in there for 10 minutes or so and wrote, "Can you please call me on my cell? Need excuse to get out." We're going to have much more on this 11-page statement in just a moment. First, I want to go to Capitol Hill. CNN's Manu Raju is there. And Manu, you just saw Jared Kushner walk on by.
Yeah, we did, and we tried to ask him a question as he walked by reporters, and we asked him specifically, I did, whether there were any concerns, should he regretted in any way that Trump Tower meeting that he acknowledges being at with Donald Trump Jr., other Russians, in which Donald Trump Jr. was promised dirt on the Clinton campaign. He, not surprisingly, smiled, walked on by, did not answer any statements, but did go into the meeting room, in a secure meeting room with the Senate Intelligence Committee staff. Now, we're expecting roughly 4 to 6 staff members to be there, not staff for the entire committee. We're not expecting any members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and we're not expecting Jared Kushner to actually go under oath. That's because of the committee procedures. When there's staff-level interviews, typically they're not under oath, but you still have to be truthful in speaking to Congress. Now, Jared Kushner's team certainly on the offensive this morning, trying to make it clear that they believe that Mr. Kushner did nothing wrong, saying that they're willing to even see his transcript of his interview right now be public should the committee decide to do that, as well as saying that they'd be willing to go under oath as well. Now, this comes as Jared Kushner's father-in-law, President Trump, has Russia on his mind earlier today on Twitter, going after the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, someone who will be interviewing Jared Kushner tomorrow before their panel, calling him sleazy Adam Schiff, the totally biased congressman looking into Russia, spending all of his time on television, pushing the Dem loss excuse. And he also, in a separate tweet, referred to his attorney general as the beleaguered attorney general. So clearly this is on the president's mind, but Jared Kushner and his team want to say there's nothing to the meetings that he had during the campaign and during the transition. That's what they're trying to alleviate concerns that a number of members of Congress had. The question is, will he be able to answer all those questions, or will it lead to more calls for him to come back here, maybe testify publicly, since he's suggesting he's willing to see his interview come public, guys.
Maybe. Manu Raju on the Hill. Maybe he'll answer your question on the way out. You should stay there, just in case. Thank you.
I'll try.
Let's talk more about this 11-page statement from Kushner. Our Justice correspondent Pamela Brown is with us. This is by far the most detail we've gotten from Jared Kushner. This is someone who doesn't do any interviews, and now he lays out what he says is his full story.
Yeah, this is the first time he is sharing his side of the story publicly and defending previous contacts that he had with Russians, saying in these 11 pages that he has nothing to hide and unequivocally stating that he did not collude nor know of anyone else in the campaign who colluded with any foreign government. And he also said, I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds to finance my business activities in the private sector. And Kushner painted a picture in this statement of a fast-paced campaign where decisions had to be made on the fly as he juggled multiple jobs within the campaign. And he said in the statement, I share this information because these actions should be viewed through the lens of a fast-paced campaign with thousands of meetings and interactions, some of which were impactful and memorable, and many of which were not. And in the way he laid out the 4 different interactions he had with Russians, it's clear he wanted to emphasize that he viewed those as insignificant, though it is worth mentioning that 2 of those meetings back in December, one with Russian Ambassador Kislyak and the other with the head of the Russian state-owned bank who has a direct line to Putin, was after the U.S. intelligence community publicly concluded Russia meddled in the U.S. election. And it's worth noting here that Russia's election meddling, interference, hacking was not mentioned at all in the 11-page statement. John? And Poppy?
All right, Pamela Brown for us in Washington. Thank you so much, Pamela. Join us now to discuss Doug Heye, CNN political commentator, Republican strategist, and former RNC communications director. Simone Sanders, a CNN political commentator, former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders in 2016. Michael Zeldin, CNN legal analyst and former special assistant to Robert Mueller at the Department of Justice. Dana Bash is here, Gloria Borger as well. Michael Zeldin, I want to start with you here. You're the lawyer for us right now, looking at this 11-page document carefully crafted by his team of lawyers. Michael, what jumps out to you?
How well prepared he is for this meeting, how capable his legal team is. I think this is a pretty compelling assault, if you will, on the accusations made against him. Whether it is availing will depend on how he answers the questions going forward and how broad they want this investigation to be. But as a first volley from his side that we've seen in public domain, this is a pretty good start for him.
Dana, he could have defended himself every step of the way with this, right? He chose not to. He chose to put it all in one and give it to the staffers as he goes into this meeting. Strategy-wise, what does that tell you?
You know, we'll see at the end of the day. I think legally what his team argues, and a source close to him I spoke with this morning argues, is that this was the strategy that they decided to go with to, as you said, put it all in one place and to present his side of the story to the people who are investigating, the Senate Intelligence Committee. But at the same time, and then of course the House tomorrow, and I'm assuming at some point the special counsel when they're ready. But at a certain point, you also have to ask what is in the best interest of the president you're serving, who happens to also be his father-in-law. And you know, he has been such a central figure in story after story after story, which I may say are not fake news because he is, you know, corroborating and confirming a lot of these meetings that he said he had. He tries to explain that it wasn't nefarious, as you know, people might have thought, but he could have corrected the questions or give answers to the questions about the content of these meetings months ago, and it could have potentially let his father-in-law focus more on the issues and on the agenda, and maybe more importantly, Republicans on Capitol Hill who have gotten sucked into this vortex of Russia.
You know, Simone Sanders, one last question on Jared Kushner before we move on to some other breaking news from the president's own mouth this morning. But Simone, you've worked on a campaign. In Jared Kushner, one of his defenses seems to be, you know what, I got more than 200 emails every day. I didn't get a chance to sift through all of them. This one email inviting me to the meeting with Don Jr. and, you know, the army of people connected to Russia, I didn't even read to the bottom of it. You know, Simone, is that a plausible explanation based on your campaign experience?
It's not a plausible explanation. Look, as a whether you're a senior advisor, a press secretary, communications director, or the political director, it is literally your job to read those emails. And so I find it hard to believe that Jared Kushner did not scroll to the bottom to find out what was going on. But on the other hand, you know, a lot of the Trump advisors and Trump people currently in the White House have said that we're new at this. We haven't done this before. And they've never worked campaigns, so they don't understand campaign protocol. I'll tell you that it's never acceptable to say I didn't read the email. You always have to read the email.
Yes, I am guilty of responding. And then people write back and they say, did you read the chain? But I'm not
Scroll down,
running
scroll
a presidential campaign. I'm just not reading Berman's entire emails. No, I digress. Let me ask you, Gloria, about another attack from the. Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Poppy Harlow.
And I'm John Berman. The breaking news this morning, I didn't do it. I did not collude. Also, I got a lot of emails and was new at this whole politics thing. That's the first official defense, 11 pages worth, from senior White House advisor Jared Kushner to the swirl of Russia questions surrounding the Trump campaign and the Trump White House. Now, Kushner also happens to be the president's son-in-law, and he also happens to be minutes away from arriving on Capitol Hill, where he will meet behind closed doors with the staff of the Senate Intelligence Committee investigating the efforts of Russia to meddle in the 2016 election. We should see his arrival any minute now.
So Kushner addresses quite a bit in this 11-page statement this morning. He dismisses the meeting set up by Donald Trump Jr., the one to talk with a Russian lawyer who supposedly had dirt on Hillary Clinton. He says it was so meaningless, quote, I actually emailed an assistant from the meeting after I had been there for 10 minutes or so and wrote, can you please call me on my cell? Need an excuse to get out of the meeting. But notably, Kushner does not once in this 11 pages bring up Russia's hacking of the U.S. election. Not once. Our Pamela Brown will walk us through all of the important points in the statement in a moment, but let's begin with Manu Raju, who is on the Hill. And this is Jared Kushner leaving his residence as he is getting ready to go to exactly where Manu Raju is. He has released this 11-page statement, all obviously on the record, that will be presented and read before he meets with Senate intelligence staffers today. As we watch him head over there, let's go to our Manu Raju on the Hill. Manu.
Yeah, he should be here momentarily, meeting with the staff of the Senate Intelligence Committee. We are not expecting senators to be at this meeting, but this is something that actually will not actually be conducted under oath. This will be actually, just since it's just a staff level interview, they typically don't do those under oath. Still, he has to tell the full truth, and it is, of course, it is a crime to lie or mislead Congress anyway. So the bar is very high. And today, Jared Kushner, for the first time, laying out in detail 11 pages worth of his past meetings, just saying he had met both during the campaign season and during the transition with Russian officials. Expect that, of course, to be a central line of questioning from these staff members who have been going back and forth for weeks and months with Jared Kushner about these meetings. They've started talking to him back in March about potentially coming in and talking to the committee. This is the first time he'll be meeting with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Now, tomorrow, he also will be coming to Capitol Hill, this with the House Intelligence Committee. Some members will be a part of that, as well as their aides, and we do expect that to be under oath as well. So a very big week for Jared Kushner. This is the most significant witness so far to come before the Senate Intelligence Committee and before the House Intelligence Committee as they look into Russia meddling and any of those campaign contacts that occurred with Trump officials and Russian associates during the elections. Jared Kushner, for the first time, detailing his own meetings. We'll see how whether he's able to alleviate any concerns from Capitol Hill from a number of members, particularly Democrats, concerned that Mr. Kushner did not disclose some of these meetings on his security clearance form initially, and whether they believe him or not that there's really nothing of significance to the meeting is another question that we'll have to probe later on today, guys.
All right, Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, stand by. Again, those pictures you're seeing from just moments ago, Jared Kushner leaving his house. He will arrive on Capitol Hill any moment now. He did not speak while leaving, although he seemed to acknowledge reporters there. We're not sure whether or not he will speak when he arrives on Capitol Hill. We did see some microphones set up. He'll get the opportunity should he want it.
He knew cameras were going to be out there.
He did, in fact, no cameras to be there. All right, he didn't speak out loud, but he did release this 11-page statement. Let's get much more on that. We're joined now by CNN Justice correspondent Pamela Brown. Pamela, what's in there?
Well, there's a lot in those 11 pages, and let's just reiterate that this is the first time that Jared Kushner is sharing his side of the story, and he is defending his previous contacts that he has had with Russians, saying in these 11 pages that he has nothing to hide, and unequivocally stating, "I did not collude nor know of anyone else in the campaign who colluded with any foreign government. I had no improper contacts. I have not relied on Russian funds to finance my business activities in the private sector." And Kushner painted in this statement a picture of a fast-paced campaign where decisions had to be made on the fly as he juggled multiple jobs within the campaign. He said in the statement, "I share this information because these actions should be viewed through the lens of a fast-paced campaign with thousands of meetings and interactions, some of which were impactful and memorable, and many of which were not." And in the way he laid out the 4 different interactions he had with Russians, it's clear he wanted to emphasize that those were not what he viewed as significant meetings. As he said, they basically making the point that they were unmemorable. And it's worth mentioning that 2 of the meetings in December that he talks about in these 11 pages, one with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak and the other with the head of the Russian state-owned bank who has a direct line to Putin, was after the U.S. intelligence community publicly concluded Russia meddled in the U.S. election. So certainly within that context, it raises the question of why he seemed, based on this statement, to brush them off as insignificant. John and Poppy?
Pamela, he also wrote one line that stood out to us a lot, saying, "I have tried to be fully transparent with regard to the filing of my SF-86 form." He goes on to say above and beyond what is required. Now, as you've said many times over, and we know, he resubmitted that 3 times. Has he done, to your knowledge, anything that is above and beyond what is required by law?
So he makes the case in the statement that he went to great lengths to leave no stone unturned in the security clearance form. He said that the initial submission of the form was done by error due to a miscommunication about it being complete, and the next day he notified the FBI, his team notified the FBI of the error, and he says he then disclosed the foreign contacts over the next several months. And he said that even though his attorney couldn't conclude the Russian attorney in the Trump Tower meeting last June was representing the Russian government, he included that anyway on his form out of an abundance of caution. But he did say that meeting wasn't discovered until June after a document review. So that also raises the question of why it wasn't discovered and disclosed sooner. Poppy.
Yeah, Pamela Brown, thanks so much. I think his point was that because in his mind the Russian lawyer wasn't a representative of the government, you wouldn't need to include that meeting at all on the SF-86
But if you read
form.
down in the email, he'd see it was a Russian government effort.
Exactly. So in his mind, that's above and beyond. Whether, the law sees it like that, who knows? Here to discuss, Dana Bash, CNN's chief political correspondent, Gloria Borger, CNN chief political analyst, Susan Hennessy, CNN national security and legal analyst, a former NSA attorney, and Rick Santorum, CNN senior political commentator. First, guys, a lightning round. Your first impressions of this 11-page document. Susan Hennessy, first to you. What does it look like to you as a legal document?
Well, so it's a really incredibly parsed statement. While it's certainly his first sort of defense of it, he actually doesn't deny a lot of it. He doesn't say, I never had those two phone calls with Kislyak. He says, I don't recall having those phone calls. So this is a very carefully prepared document. It's putting him in a position to preserve any level of plausible deniability, the possibility of errors, because, of course, whatever he says in front of Congress has to be the truth or it will be a crime.
Right. Including, Susan, quickly, this statement, right? Anything he writes in this statement, if there are any things that are lies, that's perjury, no?
It's not perjury if he's not under oath, but it is a violation of a separate law.
Okay. Gloria, your first impressions? Minimal downplaying, I went above and beyond. How do you see it?
Well, he portrays himself as kind of a naive here and someone who was sort of unfamiliar with the workings of government, who suggested, in fact, that they go to the Russian embassy so the generals could talk to each other. And even Kislyak and General Flynn had to say to him, no, you can't do that. He said, in fact, the fact that I asked about direct contacts and who would be the best direct contact with to Kislyak is proof, he says, that I was not aware that any contacts existed before Election Day. And nowhere in any of these contacts do we hear Jared Kushner asking about the hacking of the election, which, of course, was on a lot of people's minds. I think Kushner was looking forward as opposed to backward, but it was not an issue that he was concerned with at all. Instead, he was trying to figure out a way to establish back channels to Vladimir Putin.
Dana Bash, your first impression, remembering that Jared Kushner is in a much different place than a lot of the people involved in this whole Russia investigation. He is a White House employee. He works there.
Well, two things. One is, yes, he is a White House employee and he works there, so he has a lot at stake. Never mind that it happens to be his father-in-law, who's the president, who he wants to do right by. But first and foremost, he is facing some members of Congress who are already saying he shouldn't have security clearance based on a lot of the questions that have been asked. He's trying to put those questions to rest so that he doesn't have a problem with security clearance, so that he can keep operating as a senior advisor to his father-in-law, because for all intents and purposes, if he doesn't have security clearance, he can't do that job. So that's one thing. And the other thing, that just from a political and optics and sort of atmospherics side of this, the question that is on my mind is, this is so detailed and go so far to try to explain all of these things that we have seen over the past 6 months. Why now? Why not? So many months ago to do this, so that you didn't have the drip, drip, drip. You didn't have this overshadowing his father's, the first 6 months of his father-in-law's, administration. I will tell you that a source close to Kushner insists that it is because he wanted to do it in a proper way. He wanted to do it when he could actually go to an official body, meaning the United States Senate, the people who were investigating, and not deal with people like us.
So, Senator Santorum, to you, if you are sitting, one of the staffers that is going to be in this meeting with Kushner, he's headed there right now, and you've read this 11-page statement this morning, does it satisfy you? What are your outstanding questions?
I did read the 11-page statement this morning, and for those who saw Jared Kushner at the center of a collusion effort with the Russians, they're going to be sorely disappointed. I mean, this puts that issue, I think, squarely to bed. Jared Kushner was very detailed, laid out a very plausible explanation backed up by evidence. The idea, for example, that was said earlier that the only thing he did was that he couldn't recall these two conversations that Reuters reported. He says more than that. He doesn't say he couldn't recall it. Then, in fact, they went through and checked every phone record, everything. They couldn't find anything, a communication. So it wasn't just he didn't recall it. They exhaustively looked at whether there was any type of communication, and they found none. So I think this is a very strong statement on his part. And my only question is Dana's question. Why did you wait till now if you had such, what I believe, such a persuasive statement to make?
And look, let's just be clear. I mean, this is Jared Kushner's version of events and his attorney's version of events. I don't think anyone, Senator, expected him to come out and say, I was at the center of a mass collusion ring. That would have been highly unexpected today. But Susan Hennessy, to you, this gets to a point that Gloria was making, and also you pointed to before, the carefully parsed language, that last statement. The fact that I was asking about ways to start a dialogue after Election Day should, of course, be viewed as strong evidence that I was not aware of one that existed before Election Day. Now, your friend Benjamin Wittes, at the Lawfare blog, suggests that, maybe Jared Kushner is allowing for the possibility that a relationship existed, but asserting that he didn't know about it. Your thoughts?
So one thing that's interesting is that this statement is sort of designed to exonerate Jared Kushner. It doesn't say much about the rest of the campaign. So that certainly is sort of notable that he's covering himself, but he isn't really talking much about the rest of the campaign. That's certainly significant. I mean, the other thing that's significant here is that, we've been told that Jared Kushner is going to solve Middle East peace. He's going to run the U.S. government's China policy. He's actually going to restructure the entire U.S. federal government when it comes to the ability to fill out forms, keep track of meetings, exercise good judgment in whether or not he should be meeting with these types of officials during the week.
And multiple areas